In this series, lowimpact.org talks with people working to build a mutually owned, democratic, decentralised economy that builds community and doesn't destroy nature. We want to increase collaboration to bring about system change. Find links to the sites mentioned in the videos in the description below. Join the conversation by liking, commenting and subscribing to our channel.
But today I'm talking with Sue Bell, who is involved for many years in Brixton Letts and the Brixton Pound. She's now part of a group called Mutual Credit Services, formed to build mutual credit clubs and to federate them together to build a new kind of moneyless trading system. I want to talk about let systems and mutual credit, the similarities and differences. This is one of a series of interviews that will accompany a book I'm writing that will be published by Chelsea Green, an employee-owned company and part of the new economy that the book is describing. It's built around a mutual credit core. I'll put links to everything we talk about in the description. So, hi, Sue.
Hi, Dave.
So, first of all, tell us a bit about what Let's is.
Let's. It's a system that actually allows you to exchange and trade locally. And a system is basically a kind of a network, and it has some kind of principles or procedures linked with it, and often it has some kind of political or social implication, cultural implication, that kind of thing. And what the system does is it basically interacts with the rest of the world, or the rest of the world interacts with the system, either way. So the system itself has a common purpose, but actually you can't divide that common purpose from where it interacts with the world. And particularly with a local exchange and trade scheme, what you're talking about is local people, local businesses, local residents, local organizations, social enterprises, that kind of thing. That's how it functions. So in a way, specifically as a system, it works like an accounting system.
So how did it work? What tech was used? Did it work well? How were records kept? How did things get traded?
Okay, it got traded because Michael Linton in the 80s created this system where we could say if we spent money and the person who we'd spent money with would accept our check. And that then gets sent to administration, who puts it into the system.
So it's not money. It's not money as in pound, shillings, pence.
No, it wasn't. It depended on which lets you were working in. In terms of the local exchange and trade scheme that you're thinking specifically, it was a unit, basically, whatever it is you wanted to call it. And in Brixton, it got called bricks. So basically what you did was you traded in bricks. So you worked out, okay, this thing that I'm giving or the service I'm giving, how many bricks do I want in return for that? And then you'd negotiate with someone. You'd either know somebody or somebody who knew somebody, or you'd have a directory.
So how did you work out the value of a brick? Was it related to sterling?
That's a really good question. No. And it was valued differently. Like, for instance, when people came and they said, okay, I want to join Let's, and you say, okay, what do you want to offer? And they'd be, I don't know. And what they ended up doing was saying, well, I earn sterling this way, or I don't earn sterling. You know, this is the kind of thing that I've learned is valuable on the job market. Which was great, limited, because mostly people didn't want what was available on the job market. So people who train people to use computers didn't get valued very much in the BRICS system. However, if you wanted to do babysitting, you got valued a lot because you were needed. And that's partly the flavor of the local people that were around. And it started off initially in a small part of Brixton, so it was kind of neighbors, which was excellent. And then they started having trading events. So people got together and said, okay, what do you want? What do you want? How do I meet this, that kind of thing. And then you got put on a directory. But the difficulty of that was that it got skewed a little bit. So there were a huge number of therapists that would offer therapy for bricks rather than for sterling. The difficulty is that often people who found it easy to earn sterling as well as earn bricks wouldn't spend it. Partly because there wasn't anything to spend it on, or partly they didn't have time because they were too busy earning something else.
So when we're talking, when was the heyday? When was all this happening?
This was mostly around when I got connected with it, around initially the early 90s when we had a huge, I mean, me personally, I got into serious debt in the early 90s. And then again in the early 2000s when we had real problems. But gradually as we grew and money was available at the end of the 90s and even at the end of the 2000s, at the end when I was working mostly around the beginning of the millennium to about 2004 and 5. So in fact, the administration was being done here in my front room on my computer for Brixton Letts at that point. And I managed to get some money from the Home Service, sterling money, in order to develop our management system. And we spent a year, we had 4 weekends where we worked together as managers of this system of Brixton Local Exchange and Trade Scheme, and then worked out what we were going to do, how we were going to manage it, who was going to be doing what we needed to do to develop it. And at the end of that year, I said, okay, where do we go from here? Now what? And they said, well, can you find us more sterling? And I said, if after a year and all the work that Brixton Letts has done, and Let's Link UK, if you truly believe sterling is worth more than bricks. In 2004, 5, 6, I gave over Brixton Letts because I said I wasn't prepared to work in the limited way in which it was. I didn't think it was going to be valuable in any way.
So why not? Why not? What happened to it?
It kind of died.
Why? What happened?
Nothing. That's it. Nothing. People didn't trade. It wasn't valued.
Why not? Why not?
Because at that point, in around about that time, money was very easily available through sterling. Just like the late 90s, in the middle of 2000s, you just had to go to the bank. I mean, that's how the crash happened. You just had to go to the bank and they said, okay, we'll figure a way. Like when I was doing financial advice, to get a mortgage, you could only get a mortgage maximum 4 times what you earned. In the middle of 2000s, you had to get a mortgage that was something like 10 times what you earned.
So the credit boom killed Letts, more or less.
It made it appear unnecessary. And that's basically because, not because it's money against Letts, but how do we learn about how money functions in our lives? What I also do is I help people find out their relationship with money. I help them to go back and learn where they learned about it. They don't learn about bank accounts and banking systems. What they do is they get taken by the hand and they get taken to this hole in the wall and banknotes come out. Very rarely does anyone say, oh, those banknotes actually don't really belong to me, they belong to the bank. Nobody explains how the systems work. In fact, even now, when I talk to people and say, actually the bank creates money out of nothing and then lends it to you, and then when you pay it back, the money's gone, but you have to pay extra on top of it. They don't believe it.
So do you think that something like a let system, which is in effect mutual credit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a type of mutual credit. Do you think they only work when money is really scarce?
It depends on the quality of what you're doing. What we found in Brixton Letts is that we ended up with a membership of about 300 people, and very different kinds. Some local businesses, a lot of therapists.
What kind
Some
of
people,
what kind of businesses is what kind of businesses?
restaurants, volunteer bureaus, those kind of things. And food as well. Particularly, it's Brixton. You know, that's what Brixton does so well, is variable food, either in restaurants or in markets or in local shops. Now we've learned that basically 300 people couldn't get to know each other, and having a piece of paper that said, if you want a radio program, or if you want somebody to take care of opening up the house when the gas man comes in because you're at work, they needed a trustworthy person. Like, for instance, there was a woman who offered the most amazing cakes. She got to know the woman down the road, and what she did was, for bricks, she helped her to decorate her lounge. But she said, I'm not putting that on the directory. I'm not going to do it for anyone else. So what you did was you started getting trades among people. But if you get 300 people, and I'd phone some people up, so I tried to broker it. I'd phone some people up and they say, oh, I'd say so-and-so is offering what you want. Say, oh, fine, where are they? Oh, well, they're in Clapham. Oh, you mean I've got to go from Waterloo to Clapham in order to do this? That's a long way. Whatever. So it's how do they think? How do they feel? How do they trust?
So what's the best size of a group?
Recently, what they've discovered is it's probably about 120 to 200 people. But it would depend on where the group is. Is it a like group, you know, similar? Do they trade similar things? Or is it a local group? Or is it a group that is, who are they as people? You know, do they tend to be more outgoing, or are they, for instance, are they very busy? Are they a single mum family or single parent family? Here in Brixton, at that particular point, we had, the census showed us 56 different first languages. So you can imagine the huge number of cultures, different cultures. So some of those cultures were already managing, like with partner or that kind of thing.
With what?
Partner, which is basically where you have a group of people that put an amount of sterling into a pot every month, and one person takes it out to get what they want, maybe a washing machine or something.
So did these different kinds of ethnic groups, did they did they join the Let's schemes, or did they build their own? Did they join Brixton Let's?
Yes and no. Mostly no. Mostly we were white, particularly, of course, around therapists and local neighbours and so on. And I think that's not so much because it was Brixton Let's, but because Let's was a scheme that we linked with. We weren't so easily linked with Putney, say, or Bakshish. We didn't have those natural links.
But I guess people didn't use Let's because they had problems with the money, with the way the money system works. It must have been for individual reasons. Oh, this is going to be good for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Some of it was because they wanted to have, either they valued an alternative system because there was an alternative environment around here then. Some of them because they wanted to create alternative systems, which is what Michael Linton started in British Columbia initially, started the technology of it. Some of them because they were desperate, they didn't have money. In Liverpool, for instance, if you became part of a Let's scheme, they would take you off benefits. You weren't allowed welfare benefits anymore. Right. Fortunately, that didn't happen here in Brixton. So at that time, we're talking about the beginning of this millennium, there was a very different flavour.
So if you were a member of a scheme, whether you traded or not, if you became a member of a Let's scheme in Liverpool, they took you off benefits.
That's it.
Good Lord.
Yes.
So there was, I mean, how did it go across the country? There was a UK national organisation, wasn't there?
Yes, it was.
Is there a global one? And I understand there was a Let System Trust and a design manual. I mean, were there different models? I mean, what happened overall? Where's it gone? What's the state of play now?
Well, it's still around, but it in some ways wasn't allowed in a variety of different ways by the systems. You know, to be honest, if we actually did have a local exchange and trade scheme that enabled us to do things without going to banks for money, who do you think would actually be interested in what was happening?
Yeah, So a central authority wouldn't exactly be supportive.
No, it wouldn't particularly want it, and also it was still is concerned about black economy.
When we're talking about the value of a brick, why didn't you just say 1 brick equals £1? That would have made it easier for people to understand the value of a brick.
Well, in a way we did. We said okay, except that we weren't adamant about it. And the reason why we weren't adamant about it is that different people value things in different ways. So yes, of course, they had to learn, okay, if I do this work and I get sterling, and I do this work in Brixton Letts and I get these bricks, what happens? What's the result of that? Does that mean I never do that work in Brixton? But what do I do then in Letts? So then let's have a look at what other people do, which is what we do. We go in the shop or ask so-and-so next door or whatever. So we look at the directory and we say, okay, they're offering or they're expecting these amount of bricks related to this.
Yeah, so if you're a new member, I guess you would look at the directory and say, okay, so somebody's asking for that number of bricks for that work, which is roughly equivalent to what I'm offering. So I'll ask the same price, and then you just learn the sort of value of the unit.
Or you make contact with people.
Right.
So you have like social events and you meet someone and you say, oh, I do this or I do that, and you do an exchange and then you work out with each other how to do it.
Right. Time banks. What's the difference between Letts and time banks?
Well, with time banks, you can't choose the unit in a way. You can only have an hour. So for instance, in the time bank in New York, you would get lawyers providing legal advice, and they would do it in a number of hours. But what they did was they thought they were doing free work. It was pro bono. And then you get babysitters doing the same kind of thing, but for them, it was really valuable because it was worth a certain amount of time that they could then exchange for other things.
I guess that's what I mean. What do you think about that? I mean, because if you just turn up and the actual effort that you put into babysitting work could actually be sitting on the settee while the kids are asleep, watching TV, eating crisps, which isn't sort of really. It's very useful. It's
did you last babysit?
unless the kids decide to play up, but. If they're good and they go to sleep, it would be a really easy job.
But you still have to be perpetually aware.
Yes, you do. But it'd still be very valuable to the people paying for the babysitting if they want to go out. It's very valuable.
Essential.
I guess some jobs are easier than others, though. Some jobs require lots and lots of preparation, lots of training. They're heavy, they're dangerous, they're cold, they're wet, they're lots of things could go wrong. There's lots of stress. And other jobs, let's face it, are really easy in comparison. So how would time banks take that into consideration? They just wouldn't. It would just be an hour of their life. Right.
They don't. And so therefore, the implication is look at who uses time banks. And here in Brixton, often, I mean, they made a huge effort at one point in Lambeth Council in order to get time banks functioning within Lambeth. And they could only do it on a kind of a social basis around a GP surgery. So if GPs had people who basically their physical and mental ailments actually needed social support, then what you could do is you could do it through time banks. But then you needed brokers. Often what happened is the broker had to make it happen. So, you know, like when I brokered somebody who was in Clapham and in Waterloo, I might have to carry someone from Waterloo, drive them from Waterloo to Clapham to do the trade and then go back.
And did the brokers get their hours, you know, accounted for? Did they get paid in whatever they are, hours in the time banking system?
In what happens is usually is that they're funded from outside. So they're funded from the NHS or the government or whatever as a kind of a job, not particularly well paid, but as a job to do in that way.
Right. But the government funded time banks, but they actively blocked lets. Why did they prefer time banks to lets?
It's not that black and white. I think because time banks could be seen as social support.
Right.
And basically social services. And that's partly why primary care has moved into local authorities. It's not NHS in that way now, it's in local authorities.
So they saw lets as economic activity, but time banks as like a social benefit, almost a charity. Yeah. What's the aftermath of lets? I mean, I don't know. Are there still some operating, or are they just moved to sort of people got to know each other in the communities and just did things informally? And you know, where are we now?
I don't know. You have to ask Let's Link UK for that, because
Mary Fee.
That's it.
In fact, I'll contact her and I'll ask her.
I gave up with Brixton Let's. I gave up. What I did was I was asked about a couple of years later to join the local economy and business group of Transition Town Brixton. We did the first conference about 5 months after that group got together in the town hall, as it was then in the Assembly Hall in Brixton. And we came back, it went very well. We used bricks, people were able to use bricks for lunch locally. And then we came back, and then the meeting after that, we were saying, well, what should we do for the next conference? And I said, conference? Let's forget having a conference, let's do something with this. And so what we did out of the local economy and business group, we ended up with several things, one of which was developing the Brixton Pound.
The Brixton Pound, okay, yeah. So
yeah.
like the Bristol Pound and the Stroud Pound and the Lewis Pound.
Well, actually, the Lewis Pound and the Stroud Pound came before Brixton Pound, just.
Right.
Then Brixton Pound, then Bristol Pound learnt from what we did.
I saw there was a Brixton Pound cash machine in Brixton Market once.
Yeah, there is. It's still there.
It's still there. So Brixton Pound is still going.
It is, but not in the same kind of a way.
Why not? What happened?
The difficulty was that the people who were actually doing the Brixton Pound, using it, were basically local businesses. And so the local businesses ended up having to have two kinds of currency in their till. And so if it was market traders or something, that was quite difficult. Mm. And at that point, I said, look, in our local economy and business group, we don't have anyone who knows how to do business. We need to find people who know how to do business. We did a huge amount of work looking at what was the best thing at that time in order to launch, and they decided to launch a Brixton Pound, which traded with sterling. It was backed by sterling. So unless you had sterling, you couldn't get a Brixton pound.
Right, so it wasn't
You
a
had to
separate,
exchange.
yeah, okay, yeah.
My particular personal interest was using some kind of local currency without linking it to sterling.
Right, yeah, 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 yeah,
So once again, I left. I'm very good at leaving, aren't I?
yeah. So overall, these projects, the Brixton Pound, the People's Pound, but especially the Brixton Letts, do you think overall they've been beneficial? Have they helped to build community? Have they had benefits for the community?
Absolutely. If nothing else, it's a process of learning. We're learning it. We're also expanding our view. So currencies other than the one that is seen as official are becoming more open. Not the least because the euro and the credit crunch in 2014 with Greece, how they challenged basically not wanting a loan because they knew as soon as the money went into Greece, it would go straight back out into the German and French banks. So they weren't being given money, they were just being given debt and the contract of what they had to do in order to allow that money to flow out of the banks and back again. People are beginning to understand a lot better and seeing how it works, and also recognizing that the old ways of accruing money, like earning it or inheriting it, are becoming limited, and our systems are actually leaching money out from being able to use it into people storing it in a variety of different ways, in kind of pseudo schemes of like pensions. You look at what's happened recently with Philip Green and how they were able to leach money out in order and leave numbers in places which actually meant that they couldn't pay pensions to the people who've been paying into pensions and also the government have been paying into the pension. People are beginning to really be aware that the system that they believed in actually isn't as beneficial for them as individuals. It's becoming much more obvious.
A bit more smoke.
And I'm not saying that it's a bad system, it's a system. It's about how do we manage our personal relationship with money. How do we use it in our life? How is it important in our life? And how do we work with other people so that we recognize reciprocally what we give and what we get back in return?
So, yeah, so now you're involved with mutual credit services. What's the big difference? What's the why could mutual credit work when Let's didn't and local currencies didn't? What's special about mutual credit?
It's another gamble and investment, basically. What I'm gambling because of the collection of the people and their experience there and their ability to look at it in a much broader way and their ideas of building local groups, whatever those local groups are, and they will be different in different places in different ways, and enabling people to link in a way where they can trust what's happening and continue feeling part of it. They don't like with the banks, people allow the banks to do trading for them, pay money for them in a way that they never question. They never look at their statements. They never look at what they're doing is correct or valuable or in any way. People are beginning to say, just a minute, I need to take charge of this in my life and how we work. So in that sense, it's a gamble. I'm gambling on the people there. I'm gambling on what we can create together. a little bit of hope with it as well. And also, I'm investing because I'm investing in the hope that in amongst all of this and what happens and life and things are changing, and the virus has been a wonderful opportunity for us, not only the virus, but the drama of the politics.
Wonderful is probably the wrong word, but I know what you mean.
Well, for me, it is full of wonder. I'm wondering, wondering, can we make this work? How will we make it work? Yeah. It is going to be bust and boom. Even the central banks are telling us this is boom and bust, boom and bust, boom and bust.
The business cycle.
Can we now wonder at how we do this differently, and not instead of, but as well as, and then in that process over the decades, it may well be long after I've lived, have a way in which people can beneficially exchange and learn to trade. Mm-hmm. We don't know how to trade. What we look at is who says how much this costs. Can I buy it? There are 7 ways in which you can accrue money. You can earn it, you can borrow it, you can be given it, you can find it, you can beg for it, you can steal, and you can sell something. And what we tend to think of, how do I get a job in order to earn money, in order to be able to? Here at the moment, what we're saying, how can I do it so that I can get enough money to own a house, live in a place, rent a place, whatever? We're going to have to shift what it is that's really important to us, preferably not to go off grid. We're either in this or we're in a field somewhere. But look at how do we, with wonder, grow and do action research, learn, action research. How do we do that? How are we as humans going to do that together?
Yeah, I guess with mutual credit, there's always also this federatability. You can link groups together, and businesses within groups can trade with other groups. And Let's never had that. I think there were attempts, but they failed. And do you think that we could attract the range of businesses and the circularity of trade that Let's fail to do?
I do, otherwise I wouldn't be doing it, to be honest. However, what I think is essential is that we recognize it's not the system that does it, it's the people who use it.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of background. Having been in Egypt and learnt, when you trade, there's no cost, right? There's no cost. You don't say, how much is that? Can I afford it? You say, okay, how much is this worth to you? How much will you let it go in terms of what I'm giving it to you? So what you do is you have an interaction of trading. And then you work out how you trade. When did we ever learn to trade? We've only ever learned to shop, earn and shop. And then in the 60s, we learnt we don't even have to earn or save. It depends on how creditworthy we are. We can go into that business of banks. I was working with someone a while back, and they said, oh, I've got £300. What I'll do is I'll pay off that. And I said, but do you notice that this amount that you've got here, do you know how much interest you're paying on that? With the £300, you're only paying the interest of, say, 3%. If you took that £300 and paid off that in that amount, imagine how at that point the interest on that was 3,000%. 3,000% on that loan.
What was it, some sort of a payday loan company?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that person's, oh, If I took that £300, I could reduce the business I'm doing with someone who's charging me 300%. And I could manage the 3% on this.
Mm.
And do I want to do that kind of business again?
Mm.
Do I want to be in the business of using money that someone charges me for?
Yeah.
I'm
even
sorry,
if
it
yeah.
moves me.
Yeah, even if the only thing mutual credit achieves is putting payday loan businesses out of business, that would be a great thing. Sharks. Sue,
I think I've gone over time.
Yeah, it's been fantastic talking with you. Any questions you have for Sue, you can put them in. You can post them on the blog or on YouTube. I think they'll probably have a better chance of being answered on the blog. And this is part of a series of interviews accompanying the book. So if you want to follow them, subscribe to the blog and or the YouTube channel. And Sue, I'll speak to you again soon, obviously, because we're working together on mutual credit services. It's been fantastic talking with you, Sue.
Thank you very much, Dave. Thanks very much. And thanks for listening with such intent. I'm really grateful.
Cheers, Sue.